Our next panel. And for this one, we have a city government and a corporation come together to discuss what needs to happen. So can I please invite Barbara Trachte, Brussels Secretary of State for the Economic Transition and Scientific Research, and Edouard Bouygues, Deputy CEO of Bouygues. Edouard. Come over this way. Just come over this way. Yeah. Don't make me feel alone. Have a seat. Have a seat. Have a seat. So thank you ever so much for being here. Welcome back, Barbara. I believe this is the second time, third time you've been at ChangeNOW, and you're first. Is it your first? First time. First time. Okay. So, well, let me just start with who these fine people are, and we're going to jump straight into our conversation. So, Barbara, I'm going to start with you. Barbara believes in the collective ability to find solutions as we transform our economies. In 4 years in the Brussels government, she's supported businesses that respond to climate and social challenges. How? Well, she uses the various public tools that she has developed, including finance, economy, and business and housing in Brussels. She is here to tell us what we need is collaboration between companies, administrations, academics, civil societies, and the political sphere. So welcome, Barbara. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Edouard, you are very much on the side of the transformative era of construction. With 5 years as works supervisor and in sales at Bouygues Construction and over a decade at Bouygues Group's telecom branch, your expertise spans many sectors. You launched the ISAI Build venture, partnering with ISAI to accelerate the construction industry's transformation and decarbonization. And you're here to help us navigate the evolving landscape of construction. So please welcome Edouard as well. So I'd like to start with both of you. Well, maybe if we start with you first, Barbara. Maybe help us understand what a Secretary of State for Economic Transition and Scientific Research does, and maybe why we talk. This was my question first to Barbara. Was why do we talk about the Brussels government, and what levers you have to influence the way we develop and build our urban areas?
Thank you. I really like the way you asked this question, because sometimes people ask me, if you are the state secretary responsible for economic transition, where is the man, because it should be a man, in charge of the economy? And I always answer, well, this man is also me. So actually, I'm the minister responsible for the economy or economic development in Brussels. Belgium is a federal country. And the regions are responsible for economic development. This means that we have economic tools, those are incentives actually, to support businesses, to fund them, and to host them in our region. And I choose economic transition to make it very clear to everyone that we have to change, and that our economic goals will be aligned with our environmental goals. So that's why my title is State Secretary responsible for economic transition.
And of course, we have to change now.
Of course.
Thank you so much. And Edouard, maybe before we go deeper into the construction space, Bouygues is a very certain type of French company, and I didn't know quite how large or how big it was. So can you tell us a little bit about what the Bouygues Group is and where you sit within that group?
Sure. So what do? At Bouygues, we have 6 different activities. We're in construction. We're in road and rail works with a company called Colas. We're in energy and services with a company called Equance. We're in television with TF1. We're in telecoms with Bouygues Telecom, only in France. And we're also in real estate with Bouygues Immobilier. I'm happy I didn't forget one. And
Nobody's watching.
Quite unusual for the French system to have such a diverse group of companies, but that's the way we're organized, and it works pretty well.
And what is your role within those different groups? Because we've mentioned construction.
So I'm in charge of CSR and innovation for all of these companies. I'm also the chairman for the telecoms part.
Okay, and CSR, for anybody, corporate social responsibility.
Yes.
And we will come into that a little bit more. When did becoming sustainable become a core part of your mission, and how did you get to that point?
Well, making the group sustainable is its mission since the beginning. We're trying to be a very sustainable group as a group, but our mission has transitioned towards making sustainable things, building a sustainable world, and that, I must say, started around 15 to 10 years ago.
Before Paris, before the Paris Agreement?
And we have proof of that because our head office for the construction company called Challenger has been completely redone in 2012, completely solar and geothermal, etc. And it was kind of our way to demonstrate to our future customers in that area what we can do. And so that's when we really started learning how to do it. This is still the beginning. We've got a lot more to do, but this is our starting point for making a more sustainable world.
And Barbara, you must hear this a lot from the companies that you've been supporting. How is it that you manage their, I guess, them having to obviously operate in the business as usual space that they're in? What are some of the tools and the nudges that you can help support when you do see a company trying to strive forward?
Basically, what we have to tell them and we have to convince them that that environment and business are not enemies. That's the basic point. We have to begin with that. I think it's easier now than it was in 2019 when I began, because of the Green Deal first, and because of the pandemic and of the economic crisis and the price of the energy. So we have to tell them that we have to fight for the environment's sake, for their own sake, because if they don't do it now, it will be an obligation for them. It's also for their own sake because they have to be resilient, and that's also a big lesson of the pandemic. So they begin to understand that it's also in their own sake. And they have to do it because they can seek new opportunities with the transition. So I think with these three arguments, we can convince them to change. And then once they are convinced, we help them with our levers, actually, with our incentives. We support them, we give them advice, we try to help them find advices for themselves. We fund them, or we host them in Brussels, and we try them to go into this transition, not in a greenwashing way, but in a real way.
And can I actually dive into, because these are all arguments that we hear, and some people are on board and others are less on board. What are some of the actual specific tools? Could you give us some examples of ways you can influence and nudge behavior or reward good behavior when you see it within your state?
The businesses are really different. The businesses in Brussels are actually from a grocery store to a big pharma. So the scale is very, very, very
wide,
large.
very wide.
Yeah. I think the most powerful incentive is, of course, the money. So when we say we won't fund you if you don't do that, or if you do that, it's really clear for them to understand. So that's maybe the more concrete or the most easy to understand. But then for a grocery store, to take another example, we can help them, I don't know, changing what they sell, or changing the energy they use. We can give very concrete advice also to very small businesses.
And do you ever go into things like tax-efficient rewards because they've done something differently? I mean, is there anything very specific like that you can...
We could use that, but with the economic levers, there are only incentives. So we can give them more more money or more help, or say we can host them or not. That's something we can do, but we don't punish them with economic. But I think it's also, so I think incentive is really important, but we also need regulation or tax, or it's also, I mean, with incentive it's not enough. So we have to use incentives, but also regulation.
Sanctions.
Like sanctions, but not only sanctions, but also regulations.
Yeah. So, Edward, I hate to break this to you, but the construction industry is not known for being a leader in climate, just yet. Having been in this space for as many years and the experience you have, what is it that holds the construction industry back? Is it primarily apathy? Is it cost? Is it regulation? Is it willpower? Is it education and awareness? Have you got a sense, or in the experience you have, what is holding the construction sector back?
I think it's interesting what you say, because it is true that construction doesn't have a very good image in terms of carbon footprint. And I must say, when you think about it at large, it's true that it looks dirty, we're pouring concrete, we're using a lot of tools of machinery, and we've got to cut stuff and break stuff, and it doesn't look very sustainable. But there's also one thing you need to know about this industry, is that it's not an industrial industry. It's an industry where every time you build something, you're building it for the first time. It's a prototype. And so when you're building a prototype, you can't really use something that's repetitive to make it better every time you repeat it. Not as much as we would want to. And so we're starting to work on this. We're starting to work on solutions where we can pre-design as much as we can, factory build as much as we can, so it's more efficient, and then assemble on site. But it's getting there slowly, and it's a complex thing to do, because you're dealing with lots of different subcontractors. Some are very small, some are very large, lots of different providers, lots of different vendors. And so you need to align all these people towards something sustainable. We're working on that. We're also working on some digital solutions that can put everybody, the whole project together around a 3D model and make it as efficient as possible before you start, and then make things better. So I'm going to take the subject very humbly. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm not saying we're the best. I'm saying we can maybe see a way to get there, and it's probably through better planning and better digitalization of our
But you talk there about all of the different suppliers and your supply chain and your value chain. And I'm interested to hear how, you've talked about how you might actually be able to start engaging them in your projects. What have you seen as been their response? I mean, are they demanding? Have you seen a change in what they're asking for?
It's very positive, especially the larger ones, because they have enough manpower and R&D to work on solutions. For us, as one of the larger companies in the area, it's more of an opportunity than a threat, because we have enough will and manpower to work on new solutions and to actually go and scout for new solutions, kind of like at ChangeNOW, where you can see some. I think for us it's a great opportunity, and I think we have someone from Saint-Gobain speaking a little bit in a few minutes, and they're one of our vendors, and we use them, and we're very happy to work with them, and they've got solutions, for example.
Yeah. When you've obviously got a clear mission as Bouygues in terms of your mission for better. Where have you seen instances where the mission and then the opportunities clash? So that must come up a lot, and you're in the position where you are, the kind of the face of the kind of the CSR and the inclusion. Can you give us an example of when the mission and the opportunity clash?
Sometimes your client wants you to build something, and you come up with a solution that's going to be better in terms of carbon emissions, but it's more expensive. And your client will sometimes say, yeah, that's great, it's going to reduce my emissions, so I want that, because a regulator pushed him that way. But sometimes he's going to say, listen, I don't benefit from this, it's just going to be more expensive, I don't need it. And then there's another thing. We pledged to reduce our CO2 emissions by 30% between 2019 and 2030 in the group across our different activities. We work in more than 80 countries in the world. Does that mean that in some countries where, for example, electrical power is more CO2 intensive, we have to just stop tendering to win projects and just let others do them? Is that going to make anything better? That's a question I've got.
So what you're saying is you get the chance to do a tender or a project in a country that doesn't have, say, nuclear power as a cleaner energy source. And so what do? Do you go for? Do you build a project, or do you take away? Is that
especially knowing that if we don't build it, someone else will.
Somebody else will, and then you lose the business.
Exactly.
Well, Barbara, if I can bring you in on that type of that level playing field, you know, you've only got certain, of course, you're dealing at a city level, but you will have construction companies that will be global within your economy. How do you help give them that incentive, and how do they balance that need to win new business? Because if they don't go for it, somebody else will. But then with that broader objective of reducing their emissions, is there anything you're able to do with that?
At a regional level, no. Clearly not.
No, at a regional level, it doesn't make sense, but on a more global level...
What we really need is supranational, national and supranational regulation to have a fair playing field, actually, for businesses. The big problem is that the businesses which are exemplary, which respects both environment and people, they play a very unfair competition with the companies which doesn't respect nor the environment or the people. So we need supranational regulation. And everything I do as an incentive in Brussels could be destroyed without regulation, because I'm trying to help. You will see in a few minutes some example we have in Brussels. They are really, really nice. We have, thanks to the incentives, really good ideas, innovators, and wonderful projects, but they really have to fight to stay alive, because they are competing with a dominant economy, which is still extractive, which is still looking for short-term profits, and which is doped with fossil fuels. And it's dominant, and it's really, really powerful. So incentives are really good. It's really nice, but it's not enough, and it doesn't go fast enough. So we need regulation and supranational regulation.
I do hear there's some elections coming up. So this is your moment to help with that supranational regional approach. As we come to the end of this discussion, I don't know who here listens to Outrage and Optimism, the podcast. Does anybody here listen? Oh, one person, is that all? Okay, well, Outrage and Optimism, it's a really great podcast. And they ask a very good question at the end of each conversation. And I'm stealing it for today. And that is, can you each give us something, and I'm going to start with you, Barbara, so you can prepare. Can you give us something that you feel very optimistic about? Other way around. Can you give us something that you feel pretty outraged about? And we'll end with the high, which is something that fills you with optimism. And you're going next.
What makes me really angry right now is the people saying that we have to take a break from this transition or from the Green Deal, to talk very politically, because it's not good for business, what they say, and that's what they say. Or because it's not good for the poorest people. That makes me really, really angry. Because I think it's not true, and I think it's actually to stay, the business as usual is actually a punishment and would be every day worse. So we really have to change now. Yes. So that's make me angry. What makes me optimistic is everything I see here. I suppose everyone here reads the IPCC reports and knows that the solutions are actually there. They exist. So that makes me optimistic, and I'm trying to push it in a very concrete way.
And we have so many change makers under one roof, which is what does give them optimism. So what about you, Edward?
Optimism?
Outrage first.
Outrage
first.
Outrage first.
Leave everybody on a high.
For the outrage part, I'm not really outraged by many things, but I can say some things that make me a little mad sometimes, or when, for example, I'm not against regulation. I think regulation is necessary to have a organized world and going the right way. But sometimes when a regulation wants to decide on the solution and choose a solution and force a solution instead of giving a goal and say we need to go somewhere, find whatever solution works best, use your minds, use your great brains, and all of you compete and get it done. I think it's better to give a goal and then start enforcing little by little than forcing on a solution where you don't know if that's the best solution. You're just taking a hint sometimes.
I feel the panel's just starting now.
You want the optimistic thing?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Well, the optimistic part is, I think, when humans decide that we really have to get something done, and they put their brains to it and their energy towards it, we have many times succeeded. Sometimes by sacrificing the way we live, having maybe a little bit less comfort, but we usually get there.
Thank you.
I hope we'll get there.
Do we hope or do we believe? Do we believe? Yeah?
I believe we'll get there.
Well, with that, we are at time. I want to say a big thank you to Barbara and to Edward. You're not disappearing off, so if you do want to carry on conversations, they will be here at the end of the session, but we do have another conversation to go first. So thank you very much, and we'll bring in our second panel.